Tonight, we wander into the war-torn English Midlands of 1943, a land of blackouts, ration books, and whispers of spies. Deep inside Hagley Wood, four boys clambered into a forbidden grove, daring each other toward a hollow of a twisted wych elm. But instead of owls or nests, the tree spat out a nightmare, a human skull, its hair clinging in wisps, its teeth locked on a gag of rotted cloth. She had no name, no grave, no one who claimed her, and yet, within days, Birmingham's walls bloomed with chalk graffiti, the question cutting sharper than any headline. Who put Bella in the wych elm? The police called it unsolved. The city called it haunted. And 80 years later, we're still listening to the tree. Picture this. The spring of 1943, in the shadow of a world at war. Four boys, restless, half-starved for distraction, trespass into a forbidden stretch of Hagley Wood near Birmingham. They climb, they laugh, they dare each other into the gnarled hollow of an ancient wych elm. But inside that hollow, the place where an owl should have been roosting, they find a skull, human, its skin half pulped to parchment, its hair clinging like threads of cobweb, and between the teeth, rotting, crooked teeth. There's something jammed there, something obscene and ordinary, a wad of tattered cloth stuffed into her mouth like a gag. This is not the kind of skeleton you stumble across in childhood adventure stories. This is the kind of skeleton that stares back at you, a jaw dislocated mid-scream, sockets black and echoing, as though she were still in the act of begging not to be swallowed alive by that tree. The police would later wrest her bones out of roots, piece by piece. A hand was missing, the rest folded tight inside the tree's belly. They'd give her no name, just Bella, because eventually, someone scrawled in chalk on a wall in Birmingham, who put Bella in the wych elm? It was less a question and more a curse, a whisper written in stone, unanswered for 8 decades. The boys never forgot the sight, and neither should we, because if death leave behind a riddle, what happens when no one ever solves it? That skull with its rag in the mouth isn't just evidence of murder. It's an accusation carved into history. And the question, even now, claws at the inside of the elm, waiting to be asked again. Who put Bella in the wych elm? England in 1943 was no gentle landscape. It was a place gnawed thin by ration books, blackout curtains, and the ever-present hum of war. Every street carried the perfume of cold dust and anxiety. Every window pane rattled at the thought of Luftwaffe bombers crossing the channel. Lives were measured not in years, but in coupons, sirens, and telegrams. Hagley Wood itself was a perfect backdrop for dread. It wasn't a fairy tale kind of forest, no moss-draped romance, no enchanted streams. Hagley was industrial countryside, the air tainted by the nearby factories and the skeletal chimneys of Birmingham looming against the sky. The wood felt tired, used, like a hiding place for things that had no business being remembered, which elms twisted upward like arthritic hands. A tree like that, hollowed, groaning, centuries old, was less a plant than a monument, a thing older than your grandmother's nightmares. And remember, in the 1940s, Britain was a stage where everyone was an actor in someone else's drama. Spies walked among civilians, black marketeers lurked in pubs, and strangers were either harmless or deadly. No one could tell until it was far too late. People vanished all the time, some to war, some to secrets, some to graves that weren't really graves, like the one in that elm. Even the chalk question on the wall carried the stink of war culture. Propaganda posters screamed from every corner, loose lip-sync ships. So when graffiti screamed who put Bella in the wych elm, it felt like code, sabotage, a spy's mocking fingerprint smeared across the city. Ordinary people wondered if Bella was even a real woman or some elaborate riddle planted by the enemy to keep them nervous and watching shadows instead of skies. The stage then wasn't neutral. It was warped. A society stretched thin by hunger, suspicion, grief. A place where someone could vanish without much notice because, let's be honest, death was already the wallpaper of daily life. So when Bella appeared, or rather, when Bella's remains were yanked from that tree's throat, she wasn't just a corpse. She was a ghost invading a country already infested with ghosts. And maybe that's why she lingers, why her mystery still festers. because the ground was already soaked with too much fear to absorb another drop. We call her Bella. But let's be brutally honest. Bella is a placeholder, a cruel nickname slapped onto bones because humans can't stand the vacuum of anonymity. A skull without a name is unbearable. So we christen her with chalk, with whispers, with folklore, as Bella somehow returns her humanity. But who was she before she became the woodland specter stuffed into a tree? The forensic reports suggested a woman in her mid-30s, maybe early 40s. Not a child, not elderly. Someone caught in the middle stretch of life, where routine grinds you down, but there's still the possibility of reinvention. Her teeth told their own story. Poor dental hygiene, crooked, unkempt, the kind of mouth that suggests poverty or at least neglect. The pathologist noted her shoes, cheap, practical, worn thin. She wasn't rich. She wasn't glamorous. She wasn't the kind of woman the history books would have bothered remembering. And that's the most chilling detail. Bella could have been anyone. A factory worker, a prostitute, a refugee, a spy, a mother who didn't make it home. The war made everyone's identity blur at the edges, and she slipped through those blurred edges into oblivion. But still, people try to color her in. Some imagine her as a foreigner, a Dutch woman trafficked across borders, lured into England by promises or deceit. Others saw her as a lover betrayed, maybe strangled and silenced by men she trusted. And then there are the darker rumors, that she was a Nazi agent operating undercover in Britain until someone decided she'd outlived her usefulness. That scrap of cloth in her mouth, the gag, becomes more than fabric. It's a statement. Someone wanted Bella silenced. Someone wanted her voice to vanish into that tree, never to echo beyond its bark. And if you think about it, what could be more symbolically grotesque than shoving her into the belly of an elm, forcing her to rot inside the thing that once lived to become part of the wood itself? There's something theatrical about it, ritualistic almost. Murder isn't usually so poetic. Most killers dump bodies in rivers, bury them shallow, toss them into canals. But Bella wasn't discarded, she was staged. Which makes you wonder, was her life insignificant, but her death meaningful to someone? We'll never know Bella's laugh, her accent, her secret fears, or the way she might have worn her hair. But we do know this. In death, she was turned into a question, and that question still refuses to die. It started, as so many childhood nightmares do, with a dare. The four boys weren't meant to be there. Hagley Wood was private land patrolled, off limits, which made it irresistible. They'd been hunting birds, eggs, something to pocket and boast about later. One boy, Bob, the smallest, climbed into the yawning hollow of the Wych Elm, expecting maybe an owl. But owls don't have human teeth. He leaned in, squinting, and his eyes met the sockets of skull. A patch of hair still clung to it, greasy, matted. The jaw dropped open, as if the tree itself were chewing on her. Between those yellow teeth, the gag was still wedged, stiff with decay. He froze, the way a rabbit freezes when it realizes the grass is hiding a fox. Then he scrambled back, choking on panic, screaming to the others, "There's a skull in there. There's a bloody skull." They didn't believe him at first. Childhood is thick with invented horrors, witches in windows, corpses under beds. But one by one, they peered into the hollow. One by one, they recoiled. The giggling stopped. They bolted out of the wood like something had been chasing them, swearing never to breathe a word of it. But kids can't keep secrets. Not when sleep is broken by visions of hollow trees, swallowing women whole. By the next day, one boy had whispered to his parents, and soon the police came stomping into Hagley Wood, dragging her from the elm. That was a disturbance, the break in the surface of ordinary life. Because corpses in wartime Britain weren't rare, bombs made them daily. But this was different. This wasn't random devastation falling from the sky. This was deliberate. Hands on. Someone had taken this woman, gagged her, broken her, folded her into the bole of an ancient tree as though sealing her away like contraband. And here's the part that rattles me most. The hand. Her skeleton was nearly complete, but one hand was gone. Not severed by time, not misplaced. It had been cut clean off, and days later, a human hand was found buried near the tree, as if whoever put her there had some unfinished ritual to complete. The boys stumbled across a secret that was never meant to be seen. And once the secret surfaced, it spread like smoke, tainting everything it touched. The newspapers went feral. You can practically hear the ink sizzling. Woman's body in tree. Police baffled. Reporters dripped Gothic adjectives onto the page, as though competing to see who could make the whole affair sound more like a penny dreadful. And the public ate it up. Wartime Britain was drowning in horror already, but this was a different flavor of dread. It wasn't the faceless cruelty of bombs from the sky. It was intimate, someone close, someone deliberate. And then, like some urban legend oozing out of the shadows, the graffiti began. It started small, chalk scrawled on a wall in Upper Dean Street. Then again in Glebe Farm. Always the same question, jagged and accusatory. Who put Bella in the Wych Elm? Not who killed her. Not who was she. No, the riddle was specifically about placement. Who put her there like an object, a discarded doll? Whoever wrote, it wasn't just curious. They wanted attention. They wanted to scratch open a wound until the whole city bled questions. Was it a taunt from the killer? A ghostwriter for the dead woman herself? Or some prankster who realized terror travels faster than truth? No one knew, but the timing was exquisite. Each new chalk message appeared just as interest in the case began to fade, resurrecting the story like a ghoul pulled from the soil. And the hand, God, the hand wouldn't stop haunting the investigation. Local lore bubbled up, whispering about hand of glory rituals, black magic practices where a severed hand is dried, pickled, and used as a candle by witches or thieves. Picture it. Bella's missing hand, clutched in some occultist grasp, fingers curled around a flame meant to freeze the living in their beds. Ridiculous? Maybe. But in the middle of war, when rationality was already threadbare, people clung to the irrational like it was oxygen. And if that wasn't enough, theories splintered like shattered glass. Some said Bella was a prostitute, punished by a jealous client. Others claimed she was foreign, a refugee, a spy, an infiltrator. One rumor painted her as a cabaret singer who vanished from Birmingham's dance halls overnight, swallowed whole by Hagley Wood. Each possibility glittered, but none fit completely. The deeper the police dug, the stranger the roots became. Nothing lined up neatly. It was as if the tree hadn't just hidden her body, but tangled her story into its roots, refusing to give it back. The case stopped being about one woman. It became a mirror. Every fear, witchcraft, espionage, betrayal, lust, ritual, was projected onto Bella's skull until she was no longer a victim, but a canvas. And the real woman beneath it all? Still gagged, still silent. The police files on Bella read like a fever dream. No smoking gun, no neat narrative, just fragments, contradictions, half-truths that claw at each other. The pathologist, Professor James Webster, gave the basics. Female, around 35, 5 feet tall, dark hair, poor teeth, dead for at least 18 months. Cause of death? Likely suffocation. And then that ominous aside. She was placed in the tree while still warm. Still warm. The words reek of immediacy, of a body manhandled before rigor mortis could protest. But evidence was already dissolving. Britain was rationing resources, bombed into austerity, and forensic science wasn't exactly CSI. No DNA, no clean databases. Just guesswork and gut instinct. And the gut instincts swarmed like flies. Theory 1. The spy. This one has legs. MI5 was paranoid, and rightfully so. Rumors swirled of a Dutch woman named Clarabella Dronkers, allegedly involved with a German spy ring operating in the Midlands. Some claimed she parachuted into Britain, linked up with enemy agents, and vanished after compromising encounters with locals. A body in a tree? Neat way to erase a liability. Even declassified MI5 files decades later carried a whiff of this possibility, though nothing concrete ever stuck. Theory 2. The betrayed lover. A woman living on society's edge. Perhaps a sex worker. Perhaps just down and out, entangled with a man who saw her as disposable. A fight, a silencing, a gag forced into her mouth. But then why the tree? Why the ritual of stuffing her into a trunk? That's not the work of a panicked lover. That's theater. Theory 3. The occult. Locals whispered about the hand of glory, witchcraft, ritual sacrifice, a woman gagged and entombed in a witch elm, straight out of folklore. Some pointed out that witch elms were historically linked to magic, death, transformation. Was Bella chosen as some grotesque offering? A sacrifice disguised as a crime? The missing hand begged the question. And then the curveball, a letter sent to police years later, claiming Bella was a prostitute murdered by a Birmingham man with a jealous wife. The letter's author hinted she'd been silenced because she knew too much. The note had detail but no proof, and like everything else in this case, it dissolved into speculation. Every theory flared like a match, casting just enough light to make you think the mystery was solvable. Then the match fizzled, leaving the tree even darker. Police trudged through interviews, but leads fell apart. No missing persons report matched her. No family came forward. She wasn't claimed. She was nobody, and yet her body screamed that she was somebody to someone, somebody who hated, feared, or needed her enough to hide her inside a tree. And that's the paradox. The more theories you stack, the less sense Bella makes. She exists in negative space. She's a woman-shaped hole in history that refuses to be filled. By the late 1940s, the case was less a police file and more a seance. Leads had rotted, witnesses evaporated, theories cannibalized each other. And then came the letters, the ones that cracked the whole thing wide open, or maybe just shoved it deeper into lunacy. A Birmingham woman calling herself Anna wrote to the newspapers, claiming Bella had been part of a spy ring. According to her, Bella was Dutch, parachuted into England to spy for the Nazis. She'd gotten too close to her handler, maybe even fallen in love, and when her usefulness waned, they silenced her. Silence in the most literal, cloth-shoved-in-mouth sense. The detail was too sharp, too knowing. But police could never trace Anna, never verify her whispers. Was she confessing, mocking, fantasizing? We'll never know. The spy theory gained traction, even wormed its way into MI5 chatter. But with no body beyond Bella's, no missing persons file that matched, it dissolved. Still, it added something poisonous to the story. The idea that Bella's death wasn't just murder, but statecraft. That she was a pawn whose end had been scripted long before she was shoved into bark. Then came the breakdown. Public fascination curdled into farce, pulling occultists out of the woodwork, literally. One professor of witchcraft cheerfully explained that the positioning of Bella's corpse and the severed hand suggested a ritual to trap her spirit. Others claimed she was a victim of a coven, punished for betraying secrets. It read less like police work and more like a fever horror novel. And while the city whispered about Nazi agents and witches in the wood, the reality was this. The police had nothing. No suspect, no family, no closure. Just a skeleton stuffed in a tree and a pile of headlines. The case, once urgent, began to rot. Official interest dwindled. Files were shoved into drawers. Officers retired. Bella became folklore while still technically evidence. And maybe that's the most damning twist. The system didn't crack the case, the system gave up. Imagine being her ghost, gagged forever in that tree, watching as your story turns into gossip, then superstition, then Halloween campfire fodder. That's not justice. That's erasure disguised as legend. The breakdown wasn't just an investigation. It was in us. Faced with something incomprehensible, we chose mythology over truth. There is no resolution. That's the jagged truth, the one that makes Bella's case feel less like history and more like a splinter still embedded under the nation's skin. Police closed the file without solving it. Theories kept breeding, mutating, devouring each other. And in the vacuum of answers, the questions only grew more malignant. Who wrote the graffiti? The words weren't casual. They appeared across Birmingham in fresh chalk just as public interest began to fade. Like someone deliberately feeding the fire. Was it the killer? Someone close to the investigation? Or just a cruel opportunist savoring the attention? That message, who put Bella in the Wych Elm, still stains a city like graffiti carved into memory itself. Why the tree? If you've killed someone, you don't haul them into a hollow elm unless there's meaning in the gesture. A tree that old, that twisted, feels symbolic, ritualistic, even Was it convenience? Or was it stagecraft? And if it was stagecraft, who was the audience? And the hand. The missing hand won't shut up. Found buried near the elm, separated from the body. What was the purpose? Practical? Punitive? Magical? Some claimed it was proof of witchcraft, others of torture. Either way, it wasn't an accident. Somebody wanted Bella incomplete, and the gag, that scrap of fabric jammed between her teeth, lingers as the most personal clue of all. It screams intimacy. Murder isn't just about ending life. A gag says, shut up, stop talking, stop telling. Which begs the question, what did Bella know that she was never allowed to say? Even forensic science couldn't help us. No fingerprints left. No dental records matched. The war blurred the population. Refugees arriving. Evacuees scattering. People constantly uprooted. Bella might have slipped into Britain under a false name or with no name at all. In that chaos, anonymity was easy. Erasure was easier. Every theory carries its own poison. Spy, lover, prostitute, witch, victim of chance. Each one could be true, but each contradicts the other. That's the curse of Bella's story. Every answer is just another mask layered over her silent face. And so the questions are the only resolution we have. They hang heavier than facts because they're sharper. They accuse. They linger. They rot. Bella is less a solved crime and more a wound that never closed. Time didn't bury Bella. If anything, time embalmed her into legend. She became less of a victim and more of a ghost crouching in the margins of British folklore. Ask anyone in the Midlands about Hagley Wood, and odds are they'll mutter her name like a superstition. Children dare each other to peer into hollow trees. Teenagers whisper about witches and Nazi spies when the fog curls low. Bella stopped being a woman. She became a cautionary tale. And graffiti? It never died. Decades later, fresh chalk appeared in Birmingham, long after the case had gone cold. Some kid echoing the legend, or the original hand, grown old but unable to resist scratching the question back into brick, who put Bella in the Wych Elm? Became one of those cultural earworms, like Jack the Ripper's taunts. Less a question, more a chant. Academics dissected her. Folklorists drooled over the hand of Glory Angle, writing papers that treat her corpse like mythic symbolism instead of a murdered woman. Espionage historians dragged her into Nazi files, speculating about her as a lost agent, a cipher swallowed by the wood. Paranormal enthusiasts claimed the tree itself demanded her body, nature as accomplice. Every discipline wanted a piece of her. Meanwhile, her bones sat in storage. Can you imagine? A life collapsed to a collection of catalog fragments, filed away like old receipts. No grave, no stone, just a cabinet. For decades, she wasn't mourned, she was referenced. And when the remains eventually disappeared from police archives, they didn't trigger outrage. They triggered shrugs. As if Bella could vanish twice and still be treated like trivia. But legends have longer legs than justice. Her story found its way into songs, books, documentaries, even artwork. The phrase itself, Bella in the Wych Elm, has a rhythm to it, like a spell you can't unhear. It creeps into pop culture the way the chalk creeps back onto walls. And here's the legacy no one admits. Bella reminds us that we are terrible at protecting the voiceless. We turned her into a symbol because it was easier than finding her killer. We gave her a nickname instead of a name. We mythologized her instead of remembering her. Hey, the real crime isn't just what happened in Hagley Wood. It's what happened after. There's something obscene about how the question outlived the woman. Who put Bella in the Wych Elm? Is chanted, spray-painted, whisper like an urban legend, but the skull behind it, those teeth clench around a rag, are forgotten. We remember the puzzle, but not the person. And maybe that's the ultimate horror, that Bella was silenced twice. Once by the hand that gagged her, once by the story that consumed her. What lingers is the imagery. A hollow tree, old as folklore, fed with a woman's body. The missing hand, buried like a cursed relic. The gag, still in her mouth when the boys found her. It's almost literary, too literary. As if her killer wrote a story instead of committing a crime. As if we've been tricked into reading a novel instead of solving a murder. And what if that was the point? Maybe Bella's killer wanted her not just dead, but eternal. Not mourned, but puzzled over. What better way to erase a person than to turn her into a riddle no one can solve? She doesn't rest. She performs. Every time we whisper her name, we're still inside that killer's theater. But here's the thought that crawls under my skin and keeps me up at night. What if Bella's real name is written down somewhere? In a forgotten letter, a faded registry, a missing person's file misfiled in some damp cabinet? What if she could be restored, reclaimed, given back her humanity with one stroke of recognition? And we've all just failed her by preferring the myth. Bella isn't just a mystery. She's a mirror. She forces us to confront how easily the nameless are swallowed, how quickly women become legends when they should have been people. So the next time you see chalk scrawled on a wall, asking who put Bella in the Wych Elm, don't answer with theory. Answer with the only truth that matters, that someone, somewhere, chose silence for her, and we've all been complicit in keeping it. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for listening. As usual, please leave any comments or feedback you may have, and I hope to see you all again in the next case.